The bus rumbled to a stop in front of the little mountain, a small ski resort nestled high in the mountains. The students from the Lenau High School poured out, their chatter rising like steam in the frosty morning air. Among them were Amy and Peter, best friends since childhood, bundled up in layers of winter gear. "This place is amazing," Amy breathed, gazing at the towering snow-capped peaks. "Yeah, and look at those runs." Peter pointed to a steep slope that cut a jagged path through the pine trees. His snowboard was slung over his shoulder, gleaming in the pale winter sunlight. Their teacher, Miss Taylor, clapped her hands. "All right, everyone, stick with your groups and follow the guides. Weather conditions are expected to worsen this afternoon, so no wandering off, understood?" Peter nudged Amy with a mischievous grin. "No wandering off," he mocked in a low voice. "Like that's going to stop us." Amy rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress her grin. The lure of untouched snow on the remote slopes was too strong to resist. The next morning the sky was thick with gray clouds. The wind howled as Amy and Peter hiked up a narrow trail, snowboards strapped to their backs. They had sneaked away from the main group just after breakfast, determined to explore the less traveled runs. "This is going to be epic," Peter said, his voice muffled by his scarf. Amy glanced at the sky. "The weather's getting worse, though. Maybe we should head back after one run." "Relax," Peter said. "We've got plenty of time." They reached a ridge and strapped on their boards. The slope below was pristine, a blanket of untouched powder. Peter whooped as he launched himself downhill, carving arcs in the snow. Amy followed, the thrill of speed and freedom making her laugh despite her earlier doubts. Then the mountain growled. It started as a low rumble, growing louder and more menacing. Amy turned her head just in time to see a wall of snow roaring toward them. "Avalanche!" Peter shouted, panic lacing his voice. They tried to outrun it, but the wave of snow caught them, tumbling them like rag dolls. Amy felt the cold seep through her clothes as she was buried. Darkness enveloped her, and for a moment all she could hear was the pounding of her heart. When she opened her eyes, the world was still. She tried to move, but the snow held her in an icy grip. "Peter," she called weakly. "I'm here," came his muffled reply from somewhere nearby. "I can't move." "Neither can I." For what felt like hours, they lay trapped, the cold gnawing at their limbs. Amy's mind raced with fear. Would anyone find them? Had anyone noticed they were missing? Then a voice broke through the silence. "Hold on, children, I'm coming." The snow above Amy shifted and light pierced the darkness. A face appeared, framed by wild white hair and a thick beard. The man's eyes were kind but piercing, like the mountain itself. "Let's get you out of there," he said. He worked quickly, digging Amy free and helping her sit up. Then he turned to unearth Peter. The man's movements were sure and practiced, as if he had done this 100 times before. "Who are you?" Amy asked, shivering. "Just an old man who loves this mountain," he replied, his voice deep and warm. "Call me Ellie." Once Peter was free, Ellie wrapped them both in heavy woolen blankets he had brought. He handed them a thermos of steaming tea, its spicy aroma filling the air. "You're lucky I found you," he said. "The mountain can be unforgiving." Peter sipped the tea, his hands trembling. "How did you find us? We were completely buried." Ellie smiled. "The mountain has a way of whispering to those who listen." He built a small fire, its warmth chasing away the worst of the cold. As they sat together, Ellie spoke to them like a grandfather, his voice rich with wisdom. "The mountain is beautiful, but it demands respect," he said. "Never ignore the warnings it gives you. Today you were reckless, and it nearly cost you everything." Amy nodded, guilt prickling her chest. "We didn't think—" Ellie held up a hand. "What matters now is that you've learned. Treasure the life you have and treat the world around you with care." After what felt like hours, the sound of voices and distant shouts reached them. The rescue team had arrived, their bright jackets like beacons against the snow. Ellie stood, brushing off his hands. "Looks like your ride's here." "Wait," Peter said, rising to his feet. "Come with us, you saved our lives." But Ellie shook his head. "This is my home. You'll be safe now." Before they could protest, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the snow as if he were part of the mountain itself. The rescue team greeted them with relief and concern. Amy and Peter explained how they had been caught in the avalanche and how Ellie had saved them. One of the rescuers, a local named Martha, froze mid-step. "Ellie?" she asked, her face pale. "Yes," Amy said, "an old man with white hair and a beard. He said his name was Ellie." Martha exchanged a glance with her colleagues. "That can't be." "Why not?" Peter asked, confused. "Ellie was real," Martha said slowly. "He lived on this mountain for years, helping people who got into trouble. But he died over a decade ago, caught in an avalanche himself." Amy and Peter stared at her, their minds racing. "That's impossible," Peter said. "He was here. He dug us out. He gave us tea." Martha smiled faintly. "You wouldn't be the first to say so. Over the years there have been stories. People who got lost or trapped, claiming they were saved by a man matching Ellie's description. We call him the guardian of the little mountain." As the rescue team led them back to the lodge, Amy and Peter couldn't stop thinking about Ellie. His words echoed in their minds, and they felt a deep sense of gratitude and awe. Back at the lodge, the storm had cleared, and the peaks of the little mountain stood stark against the blue sky. Amy and Peter looked out at the mountain, their hearts full of wonder. "Do you think we'll ever see him again?" Amy asked. Peter shook his head. "Maybe not, but I think he's always here watching over the mountain." Amy nodded. "And its people." Above them, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the faintest echo of a deep, warm voice. "Take care, children.